right in the kisser.
How the devil are you? Why, you're right. Long time no see. Back from my holiday, had a great time in Spain. I loved it. I haven't got much of a tan really. I'm not one for sunbathing a lot. I'll sit in it for a bit, and then it's the factor 30 comes on and I'll go for a walk. Yeah, not a fan of sunbathing. Yeah. Anyway, loved it. Really, really nice place. Just down from Alicante, in a place called Vera near Garucha. Oh, awesome. Lovely people, lovely place. Now, if you want to skip this bit, I'll put some timestamps in. If you don't want to see me, it's Beer Friday. I'm going to swig a beer. Come on, all right? You're missing out. But if you want to skip it, you can. I'll put timestamps below to get to the main content and for the sound test. So fill your boots if you want to. But you're going to be missing about on a bit of fun. Yeah, come on. Any road. Okay, what have we got today? The beer of choice today is Monty's Sunshine. Quite apt. It's quite warm in the UK at the moment. It's a fruity, floral, golden ale, 4.2% volume. And this is brewed in a place called Monty's Brewery in Montgomery, Powys, which is kind of mid to North Wales up there. Quite a way for me, actually, a few hours drive. Right, let's spark this open. Right, if I can get it. Oh, there we go. Now, if you're one of those people who hearing someone drinking a drink freaks you out, put your fingers in your ears, because I do gulp. Okay, I'll try not to, but I can't promise you, okay? Anyway, chin chin, cheers, down the hatch. That's another winner. Oh, come on, Wales, you know what to brew. Lovely. Anyway, on with the video. If you're wondering what that is behind me here, this is not one of my drawings, okay, so don't take the mick, right? This is actually drawn by my 4-year-old, okay? She drew it when I was in work today. She wanted to do a picture for me and hang it on the wall where I edit my videos. How kind. And let me tell you something now, that's a work of art, right? And if in years to come, that'll be worth a fortune, mark my words. Anyway, so look what I've got here. This is the Wharfedale Diamond Mark 1, the very first model, okay? And now I've got the 12.2s, that's the latest iteration of the diamonds, the 12s. Now, these have been going for over 40 years with many different models, okay? And I think they've sold over 1 million pairs. That's quite an achievement. I think it's one of the most successful speaker lines ever, okay? Really, really great achievement by Wharfedale, really. Now, I won't go too much into this speaker at the moment, because what I've done a little video clip of the history of every single diamond speaker that they've made. So I thought it'd be really interesting to go for that. I had fun making it. Now, to be fair, some of the specs are a little bit sketchy. So I may have got a few things a little bit wrong. If you have a set of any of the diamonds that I mentioned in this video later on, and I've made a mistake, please let me know in the comments section, because it was quite hard to find some information on some of the earlier models, okay? So some of it may be a bit iffy, because one site would say the specs were this, and another site would say the specs were that, and I was like, oh, you know. So I've done the best I can, but definitely very interesting to see how they changed over the last 40 years. Anyway, without further ado, have a watch of this. It all started back way back in 1982 when they released the first Wharfedale Diamond. Now, it says it's 65 quid, which seems pretty cheap by today's standards. But when you adjust that for inflation, it's £293 that it would cost today. So still in the budget realm, but not as cheap as you think. It had a 4.3 inch, 110mm mineral filled homopolymer woofer. I think the mineral was chalk, I believe. and a 3/4 inch or 20mm plastic dome tweeter. Now you don't see many plastic dome tweeters anymore, do you? Not that I know of anyway. Maybe in really cheap speakers, but plastic dome tweeter. It was reported at a sensitivity of 86 dB, frequency response of 50 Hz to 20 Hz, pretty decent for the size of the speaker at the time. Had the crappy spring-loaded binding posts, and the power handling was quite conservative at 75 watts, and the cabinet was chipboard. I think it was 12mm chipboard with a vinyl wrap. But only a year later, they came up with the Diamond Mark II. Same front baffle, I think, same woofer, same tweeter, but on the back they made some changes. Oof. Now at this picture I took here, these have had a bashing, haven't they? They've been in someone's garage for about 20 years and they've just been found. So they look a bit rough. So still reported, but they changed the speaker binding posts to the 5-way binding post banana plug ones. Now they call these 5-way binding posts. What are the 5 ways? What's the 5th way? So you've got 1 banana plug, 2 spade, you got 3 where you can wrap the wire around and tighten it up. You got 4, which is a little hole in it and you can put the wire through and then wrap it up like that. So what's the 5th one? So I don't know what the 5th one is. Answers on a postcard. Oh, better still, write it in the comment section if you know. Now, not only did they replace the binding posts, they also increased the power handling a little bit up to 100 watts, which is better for the amps around about that time. Then 6 years later, they came up with the Mark III in 1989. Now they changed the front baffle a little bit, as you can see here, and the speaker grills. So they're the more traditional push-in ones there. I think it's a similar woofer, same size, but they got rid of that plastic tweeter and they've put in a soft dome, I think a silk dome tweeter, still 3/4 inch, 20mm. And the same as the Mark IIs on the back. Then a couple of years later, 1991, they came up with the Mark IV. And they changed the front baffle to plastic. A lot of people didn't like the fact that it was plastic. It's not the most inert of substances, really. But all the same specs, reported. They moved the binding post up a little bit. Soft dome tweeter, same woofer. So all the same specs on the Mark IV. Another 2 years later, we got the Mark V. Changed the grille and the baffle. I believe the grille sat in these little holes on the side there. That's where they fitted. It wasn't holes here. So they changed the baffle. Still plastic, which is not great. Still the same size woofer. It was a 13mm chipboard cabinet. But they went from soft dome to aluminium. Oh, for my American friends, aluminum. But it was a 1-inch 25mm aluminium tweeter. And the same as the other iterations, it was 8 ohms, power handling 100 watts. Frequency response was slightly lower at 47 Hz to 20 Hz instead of 50 Hz. So a little bit better in the bass department by a few Hertz. And then 1996, we've got the Mark VI. I think there was a 6R as well just before it. I think the Mark VI or VI was slightly better. Now this is front ported. Woofer was the same size. They changed back to a soft dome tweeter. Maybe people didn't like that aluminium dome tweeter in the 5. Front baffles changed again. Looks like chipboard this time. And there's not a lot of information on these. It seems like they came and went quite quickly. But it looks like a paper cone woofer there. And again, that is at 4.7 inches. There you see the back of them there with the 5-way binding posts. Now a lot was happening with Wharfedale in the 90s. So I think it was the early to mid 90s. They were acquired by the Verity Group PLC. But didn't have them for long though, because in 1997 they were bought by IAG, the International Audio Group. And in 1998 they came out with the Wharfedale 7. Now this was slightly different to the previous versions because not only did they bring out they didn't just bring out one speaker. They had the 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3. Let's have a look. So this is the 7.2 here. There's the rear there. So they're still rear ported. And there's the 7.3 here. It's basically a 7.2 stuck in a bigger cabinet. That's all the tower speaker was. But they did have 3 iterations of it. 3 versions of it. Now, still had a soft dome tweeter. It looks like they've reverted back to prior to the 6. It looks like the same material as the 5 on the woofer. Frequency response, all the measurements are pretty much the same, although it says that they had a sensitivity of 87 dB as opposed to 86 dB, so a little bit easier to drive. Now you may think this front baffle here is plastic. Actually, it's a new, at the time it was a new composite material called Audio Stealth, which isolated the baffle from the cabinet. And it was really inert and very strong, but the only problem was it was very brittle. And a lot of people complained because when they were getting the speaker, it was cracked or broken if it was being roughhoused during delivery. So they never survived a day with the delivery drivers we have, would they? Yeah, so a few years later, well, I think it was a year later, they had the 16th anniversary 7.2 ALE edition. And that came up with bi-wiring. And these had improved baffles and improved woofer and tweeter, so they were a bit less brittle and they didn't break as easily. Now in 2001, they released the Diamond 8 series. Now these had quite a few different iterations as well. 8.1, 8.2, 8.3 and 8.4. And this is where they started using Kevlar. So this is the first time they used Kevlar in their speakers. And they were front ported with a sensitivity of 86 dB, nominal impedance of 8 ohms, still power handling 100 watts. But as you can see, they are bi-wireable. I didn't quite like the yellow Kevlar, it's different, wasn't it? Then they introduced in 2003, around about there, the 9 series. Now this is one of my favourite Diamond series of all of them, the 9 series. Really well made, put together. The 9.1 was lorded over. Got the 9s here, the SW150 subwoofer. I've had that in. I never had the centre speaker, but I loved my SW150. Not sure about that colour there though. I preferred the other colour. These are the 9.1s. They're front ported, Kevlar, 5-inch Kevlar driver, 1-inch soft dome tweeter, twin ported at the front. I have reviewed these and I think they're a great speaker. They are still being made today. A lot of people are saying they're not the same as they were 20 years ago. They're different. They're made by different manufacturers. Well, actually, it was IAG who made them originally, who owned Wharfedale originally, and still own them today. And I think they're still being manufactured by them using the same components, same drivers. So I don't know if they're any better. I haven't had a new set in. I've only had in some second-hand ones that were bought when they came out. But I thought they were a fantastic speaker. Now the one that I really, really want, which I'm struggling to get my hands on, is this one. Oh, before I go any further, so the Wharfedale 9 is where they started doing the staggered binding posts. So you got your lows and highs there with a bridge plate in there. And this kind of carried on through all of them, bar one iteration, which I'll mention later on. But this here is the Wharfedale Diamond 75th Anniversary Edition. And they were only 2,000 made. And it was finished in oiled walnut veneer. Whoa. And they only used to use that on their £14,000 flagship Airedale Heritage loudspeakers at the time. They also featured an Airedale style magnetic flush fitting Heritage grille, so it was magnetic, not plug-in there, and champagne gold coloured alloy trim around the drivers. So it was all aluminium, or my American chums, aluminum. Lovely looking thing. Very hard to come by. I have saved a search on eBay, so if some do pop up at a decent, I'm not going to pay extortionate amounts just because I want them so badly. I don't think they're going to sound any better than the original 9.1s potentially, but they're just eye candy for me. They're just really, really nice. So one day, I'll have you, as long as they're in good nick. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that the Wharfedale 9.1s were the first ones to be 6 ohms with nominal impedance, not 8 ohms. Then we come out with the Diamond 10s, and they came out in 2009. So quite a bit of a gap, another 6-year gap between the 9s and the 10s. Now these had people divided. They were quite a decent, I don't think they were quite as good as the 9s. They still had the same shape cabinet there, but they were reapported. Still had the staggered binding post here, but they were a bit more bling. They changed the baffle a little bit. Same drivers, I believe, but they have that bit more bling around them. I'm not sure people liked it. It was too blingy for some people. They were decent. They were very decent speakers, decent lineup, but not quite as good as the 9s. Then 3 years later, in 2012, they released the 100 series. Now, very different again. So, still used Kevlar woofers, sub-dome tweeters, but they had a downward firing port. It wasn't on the front or the back, it was downward firing, so it came out here. You can see it there. They had these tapered baffles at the front. You can see them there, okay? But what they did have, which was a bit of a pain for a lot of people, was they didn't have a cover that went completely over the front. They had a cover that went over each individual driver. So if you had this speaker, for instance, this one here, you had a cover for that, a cover for that, a cover for that, a cover for that. If you're going to leave them off, that's fine, okay? But if you've got kids like I have, they'll come along, and even some adults will do it, and they'll poke the woofer or the tweeter. Now, you had to take them off really, because with the covers on, it was kind of like you were covering your mouth with your hands and talking to like this. That's what happened when you kept the speaker covers grills on. So it was always best to take them off. They performed a lot better with the grills off. But it wasn't a great idea by Wharfedale. And also with the 100 series, there were some quality control issues. There was some suspect build quality. So in 2014, they released the 200 series. Much better build quality, very similar to the 100, but the build quality was a lot better. There's the 220s there. Now I had the 220s. Again, downward firing port. They still got those pain in the neck speaker covers you've got to take off individually. And the same issue where it looks like you're covering, you've got to take them off, otherwise it destroys the sound a little bit. But I've had the 220s, really, really good speaker. The only downside to it was just lacked a bit of punch in the bottom end. Fantastic mid-range to them, really good treble, just lacked a little bit on the low end. Maybe the 225s would have been better, but I've never had them. I also own these. This is the Wharfedale Diamond 230s. Again, really, really good. You can pick them up quite cheaply now, second hand. Digs quite deep. Very, very decent tower speaker. But it's not the last in detail retrieval, I would say. You know, that wasn't their strong point. Very good. Dig deep. The mids were okay and the treble was okay, but I just think detail retrieval was a bit of a weakness for the 230s, but I still loved them. I didn't want to part with them, but I did eventually. Then in 2017, they released the Diamond 11s. Now, I've never had any Diamond 11s in. And now these went back from bottom ported to rear ported. But can you see what they've done here? Where's the binding post gone? What's going on? Single binding post, not dual, not staggered. Where have they gone? So they took them away, so you couldn't buy wire these speakers. The 11s were square shaped, but if you look at the 11.1s and above, they did have the same shape as the 10s and the 9s. Still using the Kevlar drivers though, and the 1-inch soft dome tweeter. And thankfully they got rid of those stupid grills on the 100 and 200 series, and they used magnetic grills on these, which was much better. Very decent speaker, the 11 range, very decent speaker setup. And then in sort of late 2020, they started releasing the 12 series in early 2021. The 12 series again was lauded over, 5-star reviews. And I have to say, I've had a few. I've auditioned the 12.3s. They got magnetic grills, rear ported. The port's slightly larger on these than it was the 11s. And look what they brought back. Oh, I think they had a few complaints off consumers. Where's the binding posts? We want them back. So there they are, they came back. You know, I'm not a massive fan of by-wiring on bookshelf speakers especially. I don't think much of it. But they're there, and it's kind of, it's what the Wharfedale Diamonds are all about, these, isn't it? So it's good to see them back on there. Now they changed from Kevlar and added a new polypropylene and mica woofer, and new woven polyester textile tweeters. And I think they added a little bit more bracing in them as well. So they're really well braced, these speakers. As I was going to say, and I auditioned these and I had them up against the Dali Oberon 5s. Now I think at the time these were around about £500–600, and the Dalis were about £800–900. So do you know what? They held their own against the Dalis. They weren't bad. It's just the Dalis were just a little bit more refined. But they performed admirably, especially for the price point. But the Dalis just pipped them. Now I've had the 12.1s, thought they were fantastic, although they did lack a little bit of bass for me in my room. Maybe if I had a smaller room they would have been better. So I've now got the 12.2s, and I love the 12.2s. They're really, really good. Good for a medium-sized room. Now looking at the gaps between different variations as they go up, I mean there was a gap of 6 years a couple of times, but mostly it's every 2 or 3 years, 4 years. So we're getting on for 4 years now since we've seen a new version of the Diamond. So potentially we could see a new Diamond coming out over the next year or two. Be nice to see a new Diamond coming out. And there you go. And who knows, maybe we will see a new model, maybe a Diamond 13 coming out in the next year or two. I mean, there has been 9-year gaps between some models, so we might not see one until 2028, 29. The thing is though, the 12s are quite successful. Why reinvent the wheel? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, okay? So as long as it's successful, they may not do another model until another few years. So we'll wait with bated breath. Anyway, so I have been testing these out, and now before I go into how they sound, they are 43 years old and they have got plastic tweeters. Now, plastic tweeters do tend to degrade and get a little bit brittle over time, so that could affect how they sound, you know. So they might not sound as good now as they did when they were new. So I'll give them that, right? But I've done a few little notes so I remember when I was playing tracks and listening to them. So, and I think, first of all, there's a little bit of sibilance. And I think that might be down to the plastic tweeter and its age. Just and I'm talking small amounts of sibilance here. The treble is a little bit rolled off. So it sounds somewhat muffled sometimes. The upper mids, you know, between the 2-4 kilohertz range, they seem a bit recessed, a bit sunken back. The mid bass is actually good on them. They're quite punchy in that 60 to 120 hertz region, but they don't go super low. Okay, if you were going to use these, you know, you'd have to have a subwoofer if you want really, really punchy deep bass. Stereo imaging was actually fine, pretty good, but they do sound a little boxy and not surprising really. It is chipboard, they're old, you know. Now, I did play a few tracks, and I was playing Prince's greatest hits, and he kind of evolved playing different sounds in each album, really, didn't he? And so some of his tracks sounded quite good on there, like Kiss sounded really good, quite punchy. 1999 sounded bloody awful on these, and Get Off, it sounded good, but Get Off is quite a deep bassy track, and you could hear that missing bass on the bottom. It just wasn't getting it. And I think they're quite fussy with the music you play. So if you play a poor track, they won't sound good on it. It sounds like I'm crapping all over them, but look, in my opinion, if I was going to buy some second-hand speakers, I probably wouldn't get these. I've only bought them for this video for sentimental reasons, okay? I'd reckon, you know, if you're looking for speakers, I probably wouldn't bother with these. They're not marvelous. They're not the worst speaker I've ever heard, but they're not great either. And again, it could be down to their age. It could be. But if you're looking for second-hand speakers, buy the Wharfedale 9s or 9.1s second-hand. You get them for pretty cheap now. And the 9.1s are far better than these. Okay, a lot better. Maybe back in the day, you know, speakers weren't as good as they are now. And when you compare these to the Dali Spectre 2s, Dali Spectre 2s blown them out of the water. It's night and day. And, you know, I did a video a few weeks ago saying which is one of the most important things in your system. And I think speakers are very important, okay? More important than the amp. Now, when you listen to the sound test, you'll see what I mean, okay? So when I compared these side by side to the Spectres, it was night and day difference. Now imagine now you had these on your amplifier and you thought, you know what, maybe my amplifier is not very good. I get a new amp and it still sounds rubbish. So I think speakers make more of a difference than an amp does, potentially, okay? So I think speakers are very important, you know. I think so anyway, you may disagree. Right, I'll stop blabbing on, okay? So I've done a sound test, comparing these to the Dali Spectre 2s, and I've done it blind for the first half, but you'll tell which one is which, okay? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll catch you in the next one.